with the idea of talking to you today about coping mechanisms that I think many of us pretty are
Mm.
familiar with, I would say, right? Especially in the humanitarian context. I think we talk about it a lot, especially with regard to people we're serving or ourselves. But still, nevertheless, we would be talking about what it is, why we do it or why we have it, and then what can be done about it if it's not really what we're wanting to do. So, Vicky, let's dive into the
Mm.
question of what it
Okay.
is, how you would
Yeah.
define it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for the question. I recall moments when, in some of the conversations with my colleagues or even with my clients, sometimes I hear that on mission, I do or on assignment, I do this. So
Mm,
on different in different areas or different places, physical places, people have different coping mechanisms, or they need to
mm,
develop coping mechanisms which they don't have in other environments. So, for example, I would hear, on assignments, I smoke. So it's a certain coping
mm,
mechanism. There is a certain stressor. So just an example. But going back or coming back to the question, what it is, I think coping mechanism is something that we build. It's sort of a mechanism, a set of actions that we build around something we can't be with. Um,
mm.
I believe at least, and I'm happy to hear what you think. It's maybe a feeling or something we cannot be with. It's difficult for us to be with this feeling, and that's when we need to create something that allows us to cope with this feeling inside.
Yeah,
What do you think?
exactly. Yes, I was also thinking that it's definitely an action that we take to avoid a feeling, right?
Mhm.
And another way of I was thinking about it, it's basically our strategy to avoid ourselves. As ironic or as weird as it sounds, it's basically the thing that we do in order not to listen to what's going on within us,
Yes.
right? And we explain it away by saying that, well, this is under the circumstances, it's
Yeah.
normal or it's how it's supposed to be because there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of overwhelm or whatever other things, and therefore we tend to take up this activity, whatever it is. It may be overworking, it may be over drinking, it may be overwatching things, right? So whatever the thing that you would do more than necessary just to distract your mind or distract
Yeah.
yourself in order to not to hear what your inner world is really telling you.
Yeah.
And that's the coping mechanism that usually is what we know to be true, especially in environments that we're not familiar with, environments where we don't feel good about ourselves or we don't feel comfortable, we don't feel like we're being ourselves. And in
Yeah.
those moments, in order to continue doing it or going about our days, we tend to then find different activities to ignore ourselves in that moment. So then the question arises, of course, is why we do it. I think we are alluding to that
Mhm.
already, but maybe being very specific as to if you notice that this is what's happening, let's get curious as to why we're doing it. Because I think many of us already know why, but maybe we could give the people like some specific ways for them to look at things. What would you say, Vicky?
Yes, it's absolutely, it is a feeling, as we said, we can't be with. So I can imagine that for many people you have intuitive feeling, what is it? And then there is a reason why we don't go to that feeling, because there is fear. There is usually great fear of what is it that I'm going to discover about myself. And maybe I
Mm,
even know this. I have this intuitive feeling. I know what I'm going to discover, and that's the place of great fear, that I just don't want to even go there. Sometimes it can be really difficult situations. Sometimes it can be really trauma, or it can be really loads of accumulated emotions. And we are afraid that once we open the Pandora's
yeah,
box in some situations, that we won't be able to sort of function normally, that we would just
yeah,
sort of, as we feel, we will just fall apart. and all these
Yeah.
emotions start coming out, and we rationalize it to say, no, no, I can't afford this, I can't afford it, I'm here on assignment, I'm here to to do this correctly, to do to everything. So I built, and sometimes it's extraordinary what kind of very sophisticated coping mechanisms we built around certain things. Around, it's like really a carpet, and you're putting everything under the carpet, and you have almost a hill under the carpet, and it's still you're going around and pretend it's not there. So I think this is what it's what's really happening. And yeah, I do believe that it's fear of what we are going to discover beneath, and I would say not knowing how to deal with this, or
Yeah.
fear of not knowing how to go forward with this. I
Yeah.
find myself with all these emotions. What do I do? What is it that if it makes me cry for so long, or like I will be emotional, I won't be able to get up from bed?
Yeah.
What about you? What do
Exactly.
you think?
Exactly. I think that's so. I would really encourage people to think in terms of like, what is it that we believe we can't handle? And it's usually the
Yeah,
emotions, right? Like you said, because we're afraid of our emotions oftentimes. And also, I mean, to be fair to all of us, we haven't really been educated to deal with emotions in the
yeah,
most healthy ways, I think, like for
yeah.
majority of population. So that's why don't worry that if you're struggling with this or if you're afraid of this feeling emotional or feeling whatever the emotions that you don't want to be feeling, understandable also. Why would you then try to distract yourself because you want to focus on your work, because you want to get the assignment done? But also, you should really notice that that type of suppressing avoidance can't go wrong. And I think we just need to be mindful of that. And many of us know this as well, but maybe we don't really recognize how much that could be damaging if we don't really look at it at some point after the assignment or after a big project or whatever the thing that we're doing, right? So that's why I would really encourage people to understand like emotions in terms of they are never telling you or they are never going to harm you or they're there. No, I should say it this way. Their job is not to harm you usually,
Yeah,
unless we keep ignoring them so much, right? So
yeah.
that's why I always think of emotions like this. They either want to tell me something that I should do and or they tell me something I shouldn't be doing. In other words, they're always like guiding me or wanting to guide because that's their purpose. I think we talk about this a lot. So that's why, like, the number one thing is emotions are not there to be afraid of, but rather listen to. And we can always do that without fearing falling apart or without fearing like we open the Pandora box or whatever the things. Because I also am like understanding it more and more how human capacity is such that our brain won't allow us to handle more than we can handle in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that our brain will always have this regulatory function anyway. So it's, I feel like it's never the case where we just like um, drop everything or resign from our lives, unless, of course, you're
Mm-hmm.
suffering from certain mental
Yeah,
issues. That's a different topic, right? But we're talking more about humanitarians who are going around their lives and working. I just want you to encourage you to think about okay, if emotions are not something to be afraid of, then what do I want to do with them? Or how do I want to get to know them little by little? So you don't need to do big steps. You can just start with small steps of instead of, for instance, overworking, instead of staying a long time in the office, what if you came home and even when you had the urge to work and do something, you just stayed with your emotions? That's
mm-hmm.
it. Like you could even start with something very small, right? So that's why we will talk more about what to do, but I just want to I guess advocate that let's get to know our emotions more because they're the ones in the end will make us happy or make us miserable. And we may
Yeah,
as well get to know them, right? So that's one thing. And the other thing is whenever we're afraid of emotions, I also notice that we are not giving ourselves enough credit, meaning we're not really trusting ourselves. We're not really trusting our ability that we can handle, right? So that's why I also want you to like use this opportunity for you to think, okay, do I really believe myself being that fragile that I can't handle my own emotions? I mean, most of the time I would think probably that's not the case. And of course, you
Yeah.
know yourself best, right? So you know how you function, what are the
Mhm.
like ways that you feel safe, you feel comfortable. So you should have all of that, but also like don't get into the habit of undermining yourself in the way of, oh, it's too much, I can't handle it,
Mhm.
or some kind of like very
Yeah.
generalized approaches that keeps you believing that you can't handle emotions.
Mhm.
But I always want to believe that whatever the thing we are producing, we also know how to handle them, even if they're being produced unconsciously some of the times. So that's why I would really love for you to think about like why you're having this coping mechanism is because of the emotions that you don't want to feel. So you want to have a look at that. And the other one is you probably not believing yourself or trusting yourself enough that you can do something about it, right?
Yeah.
So, anything you wanted to add to this, Vicky?
Yeah, I wanted to add that what you're mentioning is very important to realize that it's important actually to go into this emotion because, as you mentioned, there is learning. It's telling you either to do something or not to do something. So it's important to realize this. And again, I think most people know it subconsciously or intuitively, but still,
Yeah,
you're pushing it away, or we have the tendency to push it away. And because there is an answer to something, there is a deep truth in every single coping mechanism. So what is it that we are not allowing ourselves to know? Which part of ourselves do we want to not know? And that's really really deep to really know that it's never going away. It will stay there until you are going to deal with it. And the longer the time, the maybe the more severe the consequence. Just like with everything else, if you're not dealing with the issue, it's going to come fly from at some point from another angle. So
yeah,
that's one thing I wanted to mention. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is that sometimes when humanitarians go on an assignments, in particular international assignments, these assignments are coping mechanisms by themselves because there is a
mm,
situation, there is a feeling that they've been having for a very long time, and they haven't been able or willing to deal with it. So they take an assignment in order to escape from it all,
yeah,
so to speak. So there is a situation, maybe at home, maybe somewhere, that is constantly giving them this feeling that they're not addressing, and it's easier to go to somewhere far away and deal with some other issues that seem to be
yeah.
more manageable than my own feeling that it's so difficult to go into. So
Yes,
those are the things.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Amazing, Vicky, that you mentioned it because I also was thinking about how maybe for some of us, our lives have become a coping mechanism in a sense of
Yeah.
us surviving through, right? Or always finding ways to survive through it rather than like consciously building it,
Mhm.
consciously living it. And I
Yeah.
think that's really what we as coaches want to advocate for is consciously making decisions, consciously living it, and consciously having look at things instead of avoiding whatever it is you're avoiding. Because the other way of looking at it is that either we are going to be uncomfortable in the moment and look at our feelings, emotions, and all of the
Mhm.
things, which will probably last like, I mean, tops maybe an hour, maybe like even that it would be a lot.
Yeah.
Or we keep having this coping mechanisms of different sort and having
Mhm.
the long-term consequences of damages because Even if,
Yeah.
let's say, we worked so hard and we exhausted ourselves, or we drank too much, or we ate too much because we couldn't handle with whatever the stress that we think we couldn't handle, then the next day the feeling comes up again, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the thing we're wanting to avoid, it's coming back, and it keeps coming back, like Vicky was saying. So that's why either we're going to be uncomfortable in the moment and have a look at it,
Yeah.
or we will keep generating more uncomfortable situations, even though in the moment for us it feels like a relief, but it's not a
Yeah.
relief simply because it will have negative consequences. So, and if we don't want to be dealing with those long-term consequences or whatever the health, like consequences for our health, then we need to be really like honest with ourselves and say, I mean, is it really hard to look at fear, for instance, right? Is it really hard to look at shame or look at whatever the other feelings
Yeah.
that we're avoiding? Because I have been doing so much in my own life. Like mine is always self-pity. I feel like I can't
Mm-hmm.
handle self-pity, and if it comes, then I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
to do, and then I get like all this worked up about it. But then, like the last 3 months, I've been studying my self-pity so much that I
Mm-hmm.
notice when it comes. I notice what happens when it comes and how I handle it when I do, and then I have like created my own mechanism of what to do when that feeling comes, and instead of like
Yeah.
worrying and running away, I rather want to have a look at it than me trying
Yeah.
to find all the other things of what to do so that I distract myself, right? So that's
Yeah.
why I
Absolutely.
think we really want you to be honest with yourself to say, is it really worth delaying it, or you may as well have a look at it. And even if you don't manage to do that at once, you can always try
Yeah.
another time. So I think we're getting to
Yeah.
the what to do part. So what would you say, Vicky, for someone who said, okay, we, someone hearing us says, okay, I want to, let's imagine, work on my coping mechanism of working too much, right? I will stop when I say I would, and then I would go home
Yeah.
and do other things. And but I
Yeah.
have difficulty because I've never done it, or I have done it before
Mm-hmm.
and it was failing. What would you say to that
Mm-hmm.
person?
Yeah. Very good question. I would say one of the things that I find very useful and I would advise would be to really verbalize what is it that you're feeling. Once you are in a situation of calm, so create a situation of calm feelings to come out. These feelings that are not comfortable or might even make you feel maybe sad, or maybe you will be feeling loads of emotions. So really let it out. I think it's let it out and be in an environment that where you're protected, that nobody's coming in and nobody's coming to bother you, so that you have to explain yourself. Be in it for an hour or whatever, half an hour or whatever is necessary. And whatever you might be working for you, for some people journaling works, just really writing down just few words. For some people, and I think this is very useful for mostly everyone, verbalizing it. So just saying these things that one feels aloud, like I feel ashamed and I feel pain, and that's okay, just to let it out. Because I think we all know Brené Brown, but and probably other scholars of social studies, where I think one of the basic concepts that she talks about is whatever is unspoken about, or whatever we don't pronounce, stays in this dark place, stays in this shame, in this area that we don't want to go around, we don't want to go into, and we create all this world and coping mechanisms. So really, for yourself, do this. So this would be first thing that I would mention. um,
Yeah, exactly. So maybe I could just add to that is that,
yeah.
so one of the things that I see my clients do a lot and I would love to like maybe tell you also what not to do if
Mhm.
that's useful, because one of the things that I see my clients do a lot is whenever I tell them, okay, what are you feeling now? They go so much into explaining things,
Mhm. Okay. Yeah.
right? And I genuinely believe that explaining things in that moment is not helpful, because
Mhm.
you remember, we're trying to feel things. We're not trying to explain
Yeah.
things or justify things or like making things well and go away, or that's not the goal, right? So what Viki and I are describing is really like sitting with the emotions and feelings, meaning that letting your body speak.
Yeah.
And whenever you do that, usually the way that you can do it, if your brain keeps coming and explaining or keep coming and like saying, oh, we should just go and do other things, it's just silly, or whatever the our
Yeah.
brains tend to say, or right in that moment, instead of like going on the brain's guidance, like hold yourself. If you feel comfortable, I always hold myself where that's like the most present in the body, right?
Mhm.
For instance, if I have fear or shame, it will be one part of my chest, or this area. So whatever you're feeling or you think is happening, like wherever the heaviness is, just stay with it.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And I was actually been doing it yesterday. I was just sitting with it and just like telling myself, okay, it's time to just listen, right? Not the brain, but the body. So
Yeah.
detect how that's happening in your body. And then if needed, like you can say things out loud, like Vicky was saying, or maybe it helps, for instance, describing things as well. Like this is what's happening. This is how it's happening. It's moving. It's not moving. It feels stuck, right? It feels heavy, it feels light, or whatever the ways that you can describe it, just describe it. Again, the goal is not to like make things well. The goal is stay with it,
Yeah.
allow it, and allow just be in that moment. And then once you do that, I feel like after like a few seconds or minutes, you will have calmness.
Mhm.
If the urge is very high, meaning that you really like feel like you have to do something, you have to go and like open your laptop or whatever the things, just gently remind yourself that you don't need to do that now. And feeling of guilt may come up. It's okay. Like just have all of your menu of feelings there and just be with them. And that's what really allowing feelings to be. And then what's amazing about that is that once you just stay with them, they will just go on their own. They'll usually go away on their own. I don't know, Vicky, how your experience is, but mine is like
Mhm.
after a few minutes, they just go on their own.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And you know, as you say that there will be sometimes the mind chatter, the negative, the saboteurs or the mind chatter, it will be coming and telling you stuff. What are you doing and why do you so it's really just to put the mind, the negative mind chatter aside and really concentrate on the emotion because that's what we want
Yeah,
to let flow the emotions. And yeah, I mean all sorts of reactions can come, but I believe, as you say, they're all manageable. And if it doesn't work, you know, if it feels scary at first, so just allow yourself to do it maybe several times, and every time you go little bit further.
yeah,
So I would say maybe don't put extreme pressure on yourself. Just
yeah,
you know, be kind to yourself. Okay, you do a little bit today, and maybe tomorrow
yeah,
you do another bit, because you know it can happen that sometimes you know you do it first time and it feels overwhelming or it feels that there are loads of things coming up, but to stay with it for a while and things will calm, as you say.
yeah. Exactly. And also maybe it's important to remind yourself that you are the one to take care of yourself no matter
Yeah,
what.
yeah,
Right? I think that's like part of us maybe also does not want to experience it because we're worried that we won't be able to take care of ourselves. And that's just our brain's way of protecting us. And that's amazing because our brains do that way. And they're like our brains do their own function. And we can always then remind ourselves it's okay. We can take care of ourselves. We're safe. We are in the place where we want to be, or we're doing it so that we can get to know ourselves, right? We are doing it not because we want to harm ourselves, but we want to learn about them. We want to be curious about those feelings. So that's like the biggest parts that you can do, and you can take as much time as needed to find your own way to do it that works best for you, right? So that
Yeah.
you know then next time if you want to, if your brain says we have to work, we have to do this and that, you just remind yourself, no, 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 we just need to sit and feel, for instance. And then once
Mhm.
you get into that habit, your brain then will be knowing what to do in case you get stressed, in case you have difficulties at work, you know what to do, right? So the other thing that I wanted to then suggest for you to try it out is once you allow all of those emotions to be there and they just pass through you, like in my case, when I do that, I have then clarity, like
Yeah.
clarity in the way that I never even think about otherwise
Mhm.
having the clarity. So once I have the clarity, then I usually then ask myself is, what is it the next step, or what is it that my emotions are trying to tell me, or what is it that I'm trying to delay, right? Because I
Mhm.
may be trying to not face things, not
Yeah.
like change things, not want to do things differently than my usual things. So
Mhm.
then once the clarity is there, it's a perfect place to then make um, like decisions as to, okay, this is what I want to be really doing it. This is what
Yeah.
my heart is wanting. This is what my truth is. And then
Yeah.
once you have that and once you own that, then it feels like you just know what to do next. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel very scary anymore. What do you think,
Yeah,
Vicky?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's I have not much to add to it. I absolutely agree. Maybe just one sort of a mention is that in case because some people might have traumatic experiences
Mm,
or situations of abuse. So in if in a situation if we are dealing in a similar situation, maybe it's important also in this case to seek a medical professional
yeah,
if you believe that there is a trauma, and then this is important for you. But everyone knows his or her or their own situation. So I
yeah,
just would like to mention that because if we have situations of certain abuse or traumatic experience, then people might need to be accompanied
yeah,
to go through to this
yeah,
emotion. But this is not necessarily the case. We are talking about just regular situations.
yeah,
And maybe what I would like to mention as the last, and I think you alluded to it, is that we would like that we have lives where we don't have coping mechanisms. So the ideal is that we don't say, and especially as aid workers, we don't hear like, I'm surviving, it's okay, I'm surviving, which is really a phrase I deeply despise because it just limits one's life to bare minimum. But really, that we can say, I'm thriving, I'm great, and that we
yeah,
don't need the coping mechanisms. What do you think,
yeah.
Asel?
Exactly. I was also thinking that imagine yourself that you are able to create the life the way you want to, right? Whatever the version of that that you think is yours, then imagine where you are and what is the steps in between. And I think the the survival way of living, unfortunately, oftentimes limits us in even having a look at it, right? Because
Mhm.
we don't even look at what is actually what we're wanting or what is possible for us to live. We don't even look at it because simply we don't take time to do other things. And while we understand it, if that's really what we're wanting, we want to be in that environment, we want to be helping, we want to be of service, but then also give yourself a bit of a space to understand how long can this go?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes it may not be it can't be a long-term solution, basically what we're saying,
Solutions.
right? So that's why if if you can allow yourself to be living your life the way you want to and to be of service to the people that you want to, could that be a possibility? And if that's too much of a stretch for your brain, just take time to get to know yourself more, because one of the reason might be that we're suppressing or avoiding those feelings is also not to be looking at what is
Yeah.
possible and how we could live that life, right?
Mm.
Yeah, but because we're afraid that we can't get there, we're afraid that we can't really make that happen, then maybe we're trying to just suppress our desires by just focusing on one thing. And
Yeah.
we also, if we're really honest with ourselves, we know our truth of what is it that we're really wanting. I mean, you don't need to tell anyone. You know the truth for yourself, right? So that's why, like, I love to encourage that, own that truth and start building this little bridges
Hmm.
to towards the life you want to, because you have amazing capacity to be living the life you want and to be doing the exact thing that you want to do. And in order to be help, in order to be able to help people we want to help, we don't need to be surviving, I think, is also another thing that we need to understand, right? Because oftentimes
Yeah.
maybe we believe that we need to be in a certain place, or we need to be only surviving in order to help others. And of course we're now generalizing a bit, but what if we don't need to sacrifice or survive in order to be helping others? And another possibility to consider is, what if we could even help more people if we
Yeah.
weren't in the survival mode, right? What if we are ignoring a lot of our, like, genius capacity because we are so in the
Hmm.
survival mode? So that's
Yeah.
why I would love everyone to think about what is the possibilities existing and which one you want to be going by. Stop ignoring yourself, allowing all of these feelings come to the surface, and then they will guide you to where you want to go, and allow that to happen instead of just like shutting some parts of you in the name of something else. Because in
Mm.
the end of the day, I think we like, I don't know, Viki, how you are, but I have lots of relatives who are also of certain age, and then, when I always converse with them, the things that they tell me is always like, it seems like the same thing, which is being with the loved ones, right?
Hmm.
And having this feeling of, I'm living my life, or this is how my life is, right? And this is, I think, the sense that we all want is, we want that
Yeah.
fulfillment. We want that time with our loved
Of
ones.
course.
We want to do the things that make sense to us. And these are the, like, the very core human things that I think most of us want. And that's available to us at any point. So that's what we want to advocate.
Yep.
Okay. So I think we talked a lot. Anything to add, Nikki, before we finish?
No, absolutely. Just maybe I'll say that if you feel you need accompaniment, if you feel you would like to explore that with someone, we are available. Let us
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
That's also an option.
absolutely. Yes. And also, like Vicky was saying, that if you think that you need therapy, you need a medical or health worker assistance, right? So you know best what is best for you. Or you can also let us know, if you want to go through this, and also learning more about yourself and what you're capable of,
Yeah,
so that, yeah, we can get you to where you want to. Thank you so much,
absolutely.
everyone. Thank you, Vicky. It's always a pleasure
Thank you,
talking to
Asel.
you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great week. See you next week.
Yes, have a great week and see you next week. Bye.
Bye.